Hi, I'm John Osako, and welcome to today's webcast. We'll be talking about making the most of your business website. All right, well, good afternoon, and welcome to this live streaming webcast from the studios of Informatics, Inc. here in glorious downtown Cedar Rapids. My name is John Osako, and I am your presenter today, and I'm a partner here at Informatics. Let me tell you a little bit about how the event is going to be structured and what you can expect in the next hour. We have a live studio audience with us, and we'll be asking for questions, so welcome audience. And if you're joining us from work or home or out on the internet, and we want to hear from you as well. So please let Dan and Sarah know. They'll be our chat monitors monitoring the chat room. And so send your questions to them, and we'll get through as many as we can. And anytime during the hour, if you have any questions, feel free to tweet it at InformaticsU. Hashtag InformaticsU. And in the end, at the end of it, we'll be sending out a survey to kind of collect your feedback. So please take a moment to answer those questions. So we have a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. So real quick, how Informatics helps. We do help with a lot of different areas. Obviously, we do the development, user experience, strategy, digital marketing, multimedia, and hosting. And we'll be talking about elements of all that today. The agenda. And we have a lot to cover, so each of these is probably an hour presentation or more in and of themselves, so it's going to be a little bit of a combo plate. But basically we'll be talking about your website, we'll be talking about Google changes, we'll be talking about responsive design, we'll be talking about content marketing, picking the right tools, SEO, SEM for search engine optimization and search engine marketing, social media, mobile, and video. So again, ask questions as we go. So number one, home base. And this has been a trend that's been occurring over the years, and really now it is solidly there. We have many clients who come to us, they get a revamp of the website, and that website is then kind of driving all their other marketing efforts. It is your face to the entire world right now, and really what we say is everything is interconnected. So it's really important that you use your home base and you use all your efforts, whether it's online or offline, they all kind of drive back to that home base. In the end, the simple equation is a bad website is a bad image. I read articles that talk about people make a value judgment on your website in like 0.5 seconds. I think maybe you get at least a full second that you look at it before you decide this is value information or this is not good information. So it's really important that it looks good. And the other aspect is users are super task oriented. So the days of people just kind of doing exploration are long gone. People are there to get a phone number, buy a product, you name it, they're there to complete a particular task. So really got to keep that in mind. And that concept of a cross-platform cohesion, it really matters. So how your website needs to look how your marketing looks, and your Facebook and your Twitter, everything kind of needs to interact back and forth with one another. And your website should, again, blend that form and function. So these aspects, a little harder to read here, but basically it's the webinars, it's content, it's blog posts, search engine optimization, online advertising, landing pages, email marketing, audits, video and photography, social media, web coding, and mobile apps. They all kind of point not only to each other, but then back to your website as kind of home base. So I talk about this one first because there is a lot of Google changes. The last one was, the big change was Hummingbird, which is the biggest algorithm update since basically Google started. And that occurred a couple years ago, late fall in 2013, and that changed the way that searches are done. It is a new focus on conversational search. And you may have not even realized you've been doing it, but all of us have. And I like to use a great example of a flat tire. Anywhere in Google, I'm not going to just type in flat tire because I'm going to get everything that's not related. I'm going to say, how do I fix a flat tire? I'm going to put in questions expecting answers because, again, I am task-oriented. I'm not just seeing all the flat tire options available on the internet that Google's found so far. So I put it in, and I get a video back, and I get text results underneath that. And Google noticed that and said, we need to adapt how our searches are because their goal is to always return the best results possible. So it's a really focus on that conversational search. And the other aspect is the resurgence of long-tail keywords. And a long-tail keyword is something when you type it in, it kind of starts filling it out for you. In the end, based on different phrases. That's based on search volume. That's based on number of searches that have been done on it, how much content there is on the internet. There's a whole algorithm that kind of goes into what that long tail keyword is. The long and short of it is if you want to be found for that phrase, you need to make sure that you're incorporating that information throughout the site. It's really important from that standpoint. And in the end, content is king. Google has gotten really good at not only tracking what the page has, but understanding a phrase in the context of other phrases. So, it's not just a single keyword, it's a longer phrase, or it's a longer context of information. Legitimate inbound links are vital. So again, that's not spam links in, but it's actually links to your site. Google values that in kind of algorithm of saying, if a lot of people link to you, therefore you are a good source of information. So it's really important to get that. Yes, first question. Run this over.
Is that social media as well, linking back, or is that separate because it's not really like a personal site?
Sure. No, that's a great question. He asked, is it social media? Do social media links count? And the short answer is yes, they do count. They don't count in the way that Google goes through and indexes everything on Facebook. It doesn't work like that. However, Google does take your social reach into account when putting together your algorithm for SEO. So, but that's a great question. And the keywords still really do matter. I can't stress that enough. It's important to know, you're going to be found based on how your content is structured. So really think about that. And then the other aspect here is mobile first. For those of you that may not have known that Google rolled out an algorithm update this past week that really said now, as you pull up your website on devices, there's a little mobile friendly in front of it or not. In text, and basically Google has gone through and determined whether or not your site is responsive, which I'll talk about in a second, and tagged it as, yes, this is mobile friendly, or it's not mobile friendly. So when you look at it, you say, oh, I'm going to be able to have something that's sized appropriately to my device, or I'm going to go and I'm going to pinch and zoom. So that was a big update. And the other kind of corollary of that is that sites that are not responsive are getting a little bit of a penalty from that standpoint. So it's important to kind of make sure it's responsive. So what's responsive, you say? Well, responsive design is basically a series of code that gets put behind a website that basically allows it to adapt automatically for each device. When I started making websites back in my day, I knew if people are coming to us, they're going to come to us from a PC. It's going to be 640 by 480. I knew the platform. They're probably using IE4. I pretty much knew the entire world of who's going to come to this site, and I could code for that. Anymore, every device is ever changing, and I cannot even begin to predict what 2 or 3 years are going to bring down the road. And if they're coming to me from a phone, from a tablet, from a phablet, from a netbook, from a notebook, from a laptop, from a desktop, it kind of goes on and on and on. Maybe an Apple Watch. I got to be able to say, okay, as they come from all these different devices with different sizes, how do I automatically, dynamically reshape the content to allow for it to be most effective? And really, a lot of it is that you can do some really cool stuff with it. One is you can kind of change the orientation. So when I come to a website, let's say, and I'm just doing some research for my desktop, we did a website for a firm here called Shive Hattery, which has for architectural engineering, they have beautiful photos. And when you come to it from the desktop, you get all these gorgeous photos. When you come to it from the mobile, you get a smaller version of the photo, but you also then have all the locations where their offices are automatically kind of pop up there. I can click on it, and I can click on phone number, I can click on map, because I know if I'm picking it up on my phone, I'm probably not doing research on a new architectural firm. I am probably doing, I'm trying to park my car, I'm trying to call somebody, I'm trying to find a place, to hook in my GPS. So you can change the orientation, same code, open it back up, and it's that same broad site. So you can really think about how people are using your site and adapt from that standpoint. Again, search engines now rank mobile friendlies higher. And the amount of mobile devices, and I'll talk a little bit more about mobile later, has just skyrocketed and will continue to skyrocket as it goes forward. So it's really important to think mobile is part of the mix. And again, I know when I come to a site and I click on it and it's all the pinch and zoom. Like I can pinch and zoom, and that basically means it comes in and you just kind of zoom in and zoom out. It's really hard to read. Like you have to kind of scan back and forth. And so that responsive design says when I pick up on my phone, I'm going to have in a web-readable, easy-to-read font, which makes it very, very handy from that standpoint. And if you get nothing else out of the whole conversation today, you need to have your site as responsive. That is #1 factor for SEO importance. And again, it's flexibility. So delivering more content to more users over more platforms going forward. Next up is content marketing. Okay, this is a term that gets used very often in kind of a generic context, but the theory is more or less is if I produce a lot of good value-added content on my site, I'm going to get benefits from a search engine standpoint, but I'm also going to be positioning myself long-term as kind of a thought leader. I'm going to position myself as a resource. So I go back to this as a great example. I went to a conference and one of the people there talked a lot about they make fiberglass pools. I didn't know there was such a thing, but they make them. And so they found that they were losing a lot of search engine to people just typing in concrete pools, which is not the product they sell. However, what they did is they made a lot of value-added content about concrete pools versus fiberglass pools, things to watch out for concrete pools. I mean, so they were able to kind of add content that wasn't maybe directly related to their product and add it to the value to the user. So it wasn't, and it wasn't that fiberglass pools came out ahead in every single scenario either. They did pros and cons. They tried to be somewhat balanced in it. What the long-term goal was is they were able to really raise their search engine value from that standpoint. And it's a way that you build trust with people. Again, it's ways that position you long-term as a thought leader in your industry. So you become the resource of information. And just like everything else, not every single blog article or post you put out there will generate these leads. It's a long-term race of always putting in content, and again, that value-added content. So you are helping that person, allowing them to do something more efficiently, more effectively, faster, cooler, 5 tips. I mean, we've probably read all articles. I read a lot of Lifehacker that talks about 5 tips for cleaning your dishwasher or something like that. These are all little helpful things that people can multi-use to really get people to your site. So traditional efforts of going out and doing a bunch of cold calls is really starting to be taken over by those that are kind of coming into the website. And that can be a whole lot of different aspects. Obviously, you can use some social networks and ads and direct marketing to just generally promote the site. You can use social network for sure to drive engagement. So you are interacting with your client or customer or potential customer. You can use search engine optimization and analytics to see how effective your content is being. I mean, we can open up any blog that we've ever written and tell you how many people looked at it and when they looked at it, how long they spent on the page. And that's handy for us because we can find over time blog topics that are more effective. We will write more topics like that. So again, it's positioning ourselves as a thought leader. You can use, beyond content creation, this includes video, which I'll talk about a little bit as well. Definitely pictures and images. Flickr is a great example. These are trending, these are things that kind of drive back to the creation. And then obviously just discussion. And so that can be blogs, bookmarking, and other types of marketing. I think we have a chat question.
Yes, we have a question from the chat room. They want to know if you recommend a particular blogging platform.
Okay, that's a great question. There are lots of pros and cons when it comes to every single platform, and I'll talk about tools coming up. I would say, if nothing else, the one thing to take away is make sure that your blog is on your site. There was a trend several years back where you would have a separate blog that linked back to your site, thinking that would be the value of those inbound links. But the reality is, when you have that, you are putting all that search engine effort into a site that isn't yours. So all those keywords, all those phrases are there on that site. And then the other downside of that is, when the user's done, they have to take a much stronger call to action to then click through to your site to find you and click through, whereas they have a ton of distractions around. They have other related articles, related posts, unrelated posts, top trending posts. They have all these other aspects that kind of drive distraction. If you have it used like a blogger.com or a WordPress site that's hosted at WordPress, I would definitely say work to get it hosted on your site. So that's a great question. Thank you. And in the end, a lot of this drives sales. This has been one where, again, it's been, the way that we do research has changed. The way that we buy things has changed. With the rise of the internet, very few of us will go out and do a major purchase, of, let's say, a car, for example, without going through and doing a ton of research, looking at the car website, looking at review websites, seeing, posting out to your Facebook friends to say, what do you think of this? We do a lot of research before we even pick up the phone and begin engagement. And so having a lot of that information out there can help really get people to engage with you and learn about you long before they pick up the phone and call you. So how do you do all this, right? So the secret to doing this well is doing an editorial calendar. It's a really fancy way of saying, thinking about what you're going to say over a long period of time. Because, you know, I like to use blogs as a great example where it's really easy to start a blog. Super easy. In fact, the first 10 are super easy because you have lots of topics and ideas. Because blog consistency is really important. So what do you blog about on week 20 and week 52 and week 390? I mean, it's important to really kind of keep that in mind. And so putting an editorial calendar allows you to really sit down and plan out ahead of time. And it can be, there's tools to do it. We use Excel, and it basically just kind of says when it's going to occur, what is it, and then what's the post. And then again, it can work for blog topics. It can work for the whole blog itself. It can certainly work for social media, and we highly recommend it because the worst thing you can do is sit down at 9 a.m. and realize I have to put out a blog post now because it's part of my requirements. It's part of the things I want to do from SEO. There are going to be a million things that kind of jump ahead of you besides writing a blog post, and quite frankly, we call it writing a blog post or writing under duress. Doesn't always really get good search engine value out of it either because you are not thinking, how does this fit into the master brand? How does this fit into what the efforts are? We oftentimes do blogs too that kind of have a thematic arc over the course of a month. So we'll do one blog a week and we'll focus on a particular industry, or we'll kind of go back and forth between different industries. It just really depends on what your thoughts are and what your strategies are and how you can include that information back into your plan. Really, we would say if you can chart out a quarter of blog, for each quarter, do your blog topic. And really that can be as simple as writing the name of the blog. A lot of thought goes into that blog title. It has good SEO value, certainly, but that's also the thing that's going to grab somebody as you post it to social media saying, come read this blog. What does that title say? Is it engaging? Is it grabbing? Is it hitting the phrases and marks that you want it to hit? And by having those in the can, too, it allows you to have a stock of backup posts or topics as well. So if you come into a day where you're just not able to get to it, you have maybe 2 or 3 weeks worth in there already, so you can just kind of pop those out as they go. There's also tools that allow you to kind of preload those various items into posts for social. There's pros and cons to those as well. You got to be very cognizant of what's going on in the world. If you have topics that are related, several companies have got kind of stung from that standpoint, but there are tools to make it easier. But in the end, the best thing to do is just be organized in the process. And the other aspect that's here, that's handy, particularly for social media, is have kind of a slew of approved posts or approved responses. For some people who are in highly regulated industries, if someone gives you cheers or thanks, interact with that person right away, get back to them right away. And if you have a business where you have to go through an approval process, have several of them kind of ready to go. This is particularly true if someone has a negative experience. I mean, our inclination before is, as people is, oh, I want to delete out bad content. But the reality is, you got to keep it there. It's part of the whole business, and people see how you treat the best, how you do the best, and how you do the worst, and how you handle the worst can be equally important. So have a set response to respond to that person. And I would say if it is a negative one, drive it to a private message. Don't try to work out the whole issue there per se, but have those set up so you don't have to go through an approval process for that. The last one here is kind of, again, the rise of infographics. We all see them. There'll be several more throughout this presentation. And it's really just a way to visually display data in content. So, infographics make a ton of sense when it comes to numbers and charts, and how they're represented really promotes a lot of engagement. But even this is one that we did for a firm that obviously does fundraising, and they had a blog post called "The 7 Deadly Sins," of capital campaigns. And rather than, they had the blog post, and they said, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take each one, we're going to take the high points, the elements, the key components, pull it off, and create a little visual infographic. We're then going to release that over the course of 7 weeks and basically drive that back to that same common blog. So it gave them a lot of engagement in the sense that it got more views for that key blog that they really wanted to drive a lot of traffic to. And the other aspect is when you post this on social media, it's engaging. I mean, people love photos. There's all the stats that go back and that really highlight how much more engagement photos get than text posts. I mean, if you do social media yourself, just think of if you post a photo, you usually get a lot more likes than if you post some kind of comment. So, it's a great way to do it. It makes it engaging, and it hits those high points, again, using spot bolding and other kind of techniques. So the question next is, John, what's the right tool for me? And these are all the tools. We're tool agnostic, so we don't have a particular tool, and everyone falls into this tool because it depends on the requirements. I like to use the example of, if I know I'm going to drive cross country, I can start with a motorcycle, and then I realize I'm going to take a passenger, so I get a sidecar, and then I'm going to have to carry luggage, so then I get the little luggage things on the sides, and then I realize I need to carry more luggage, so I get a trailer, and then I don't want the wind in my face the whole time, so I get a windshield. Really, in the end, you probably should just started with a car. So, rather than go through this process where you start with something small and do a ton of add-ons for it, it really helps to think about what your requirements are going into it. So, what do you need it to do? How easy do you need it to be? Are you going to update it? Is your team going to update it? Does it need an approval process? Do you need a WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get? Do you want something that is a very fast performer? Do you want something that allows for a storage of information? I mean, all these things kind of vary. I can't tell you what you think is important. I can tell you what are the options out there, but you need to say, I need it to do this, this, and this. I can't develop those requirements for you. That's your values. Those are the things that are important. If I go into your house and pick up 10 objects, how I position those objects in importance is going to be very different from how you're going to position those objects in importance. So understanding what those requirements are going into it will allow you to choose a great platform. And again, there's many ones out there. This is one of probably, if you look for CMS, which is again that content management system, we have probably not done a website without a CMS in maybe 8, 9 years. I mean, it's been a long time. Really, every website needs to have a CMS, and that is the ability to log in, easily change content, add photos, add links, add articles, etc. And that's something that's just critical anymore, because your website really does need to jump around and adapt quickly to kind of different needs. Any questions on tools? No one ever wants to talk about tools. I want to talk about tools, but okay. So search engine optimization. This is probably the #1 question that we get is, how do I get to be on the first page of Google? #1, how do I get to be at the top of Google? And I will say that SEO is really a foot race with no ending. Okay, everyone's kind of working on it all together. It's really important to think about, where do you want to be strategically? This goes back to that content discussion I said before, is it's not just about, I got to do a blog, I'm going to pop out a blog. It's really thinking, where do I want to be found, and what do I want to be found for, and then building it into the whole site, through the site DNA, as I like to say. And it kind of divides into 2 factors. One are things that you do on your website that you can control, and the other one is things that are done off your website. So things on your website, in a most simple term, this has to do a lot with the coding structure itself, the HTML. How is it coded? Are there errors? How fast it is? I mean, some of the really kind of nuts and bolts component of it. But the other aspect here is, what are the headers for the pages? Headers are a tag in HTML that basically H1 through H5, which allows the search engine to say value. H1 is a more valuable piece of information than an H5. So you can use that strategically to kind of to promote what's important. But the big one, walk away with here, is page titles and page descriptions. And I'll just kind of pull up, if I go to a Google search, type some stuff in, and I get results back. This is an example of the page title and the page results. So this here is your title, and this here is your page description. So it helps twofold. One is it helps the search engine find you and identify you correctly. Every single page on your website should be different page title, because every single page on your website is different. The page title should accurately reflect the content on the site and what you're trying to do, but it's also your opportunity to kind of put key phrases and key elements in there. The page title is restricted to about 55 characters, so it's definitely, you don't want a long one. You want something very simple, because that's how it gets everything all, without having to be necessarily ellipsed out or something. And the other aspect is the page description is what appears on the search. So the page title is what appears here, and the page description is what appears underneath it. So again, thinking a lot about for your website, for this page, if it's an about page, we are the providers of, the best providers of lawnmower repair in the Cedar Rapids area. So I got lawnmower repair, I got Cedar Rapids, I tied that in kind of together. So if people type that in, this will be a result that kind of comes back from that standpoint. So it's really important to think about the HTML and those page titles and page descriptions. One of the biggest sins you can do in Google's eyes is actually have the same page title for all your pages. That's something that'll get you, penalized, in fact. The other aspect here is content. Okay, I'm going to hit this content and run heavily because it's really important to have good content, but it is how frequently is it updated? What are the words and phrases that you're using in it? How is it designed? What's the architecture? What's your navigation look like? Because Google looks at your site navigation and favors, things in there it favors more than those in the secondary navigation. And then what is the quality of the content? How often is it being updated? How long is it? How valuable is it? Is it spammy where it's not really providing much value, or is it kind of chocked full? And again, I go back to content, value-added content, twofold. One is great for SEO, but then the other aspect is, again, your positioning strategically as a thought leader. It's that value-added content to the user. So that kind of handles the on-site factors. The off-site factors include incoming links. So to your earlier question, it's, where am I getting linked from? And that's the quality of what those are. So, is it from a really, well-known site, or is it kind of from, 3 or 4 different sites that you own? So it knows to look at that. What is the text? What is the actual text that is in the link that links back to your site? That can have a factor as well. And what is the quantity? So how many links are coming to your site? And again, Google's model is if I have site A and site B with the exact same content, and 3 people link to site A and 2 people link to site B, site A is a little better resource of information. Now, if site B here is one site, and let's say CNN, it says, okay, well, CNN's a big site. It has a lot of value. That actually outweighs it. So it's not necessarily just the quantity, but it's also the quality. I do hear we have a chat question.
Yeah, one of our chat people was just curious that if you had to pick one of these SEO things out of the entire chart, which one would you focus on that would get the most benefit?
That's a coffee question. I'll buy you a cup of coffee for that great question. I would say focus on content. That's it. I mean, you can have a site that actually, I hate to say it, that has errors on it and it's maybe not the best syntax ever, but if it's a good source of content, that is going to trump that. So I would say, the incoming links, all the offsite factors, right? Again, I talked a little incoming links. The other one I'll just talk quickly is domain trust. So from where are those links coming from? How trusted is it? If you go to register your domain, always register for 3 years or greater. Google actually penalizes people who only register a domain for 1 year. So because that helps build that domain trust. And the other aspect here is the social media. So what the social reach is, again, Google doesn't index Facebook per se, but it can tell you it knows how engaged you are on social, and then the reputation authority that kind of comes back to social media. So I would say, the on-site are things you have total control over. The off-site, it's a little harder to have control. It takes maybe a little more effort to get those down. People ask, John, where am I going to inbound links from? And I say, well, this is where if you are a distributor, you get a link from your manufacturer. If you have collaborative services or businesses, you can kind of link back and forth. If you participate in forums, make sure a link back to your site is always there. I mean, there's different ways that you can get those links to come back. I will say, as a whole, though, that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time to kind of hunt those down. So if you can have good content on the page, you will start to be found organically. So that's really where I would focus. And again, if your blog isn't on your website, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So please get your blog to your website if you need it. Yes, you have a question?
Yeah. In relation to the blogs, is there like a certain length of blog that ranks higher, or is it pretty much just content only and it can be as long or as short as you need it to be?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. So with blogs, how long does it need to be? And I'd say it needs to be long enough to be interesting and readable. Nothing super long. People lose attention. If you ever see, there's an internet acronym called TLDR, is too long, didn't read, and people will say that sometimes if a thing goes on and on. That's why, like it or not, BuzzFeed has done so well, is it takes all these stupid 5 lists, 5 this, 3 that, 7 this, 10 things. It makes it very easy to remember, to make it chunkable. People know when they come to it, I'm not going to read a long article about something. It's very easy to consume because people are looking at their phone, in the car, waiting for gymnastics practice to be over, any number of things. So short and sweet, and I would say engaging titles. That's the other one where, again, focus a lot on titles. Don't write the blog and then figure out the title. Start with that title, because that can really kind of dictate how long it should be. 3 to 4 paragraphs, so they don't have to be long, certainly. But again, integrate all those words as you go. It's a great question. Coffee question. Thank you. All right, any other questions on SEO? All right, so I'll go to SEM and AdWords. And this one here is basically, if you're not getting traction in your organic results, you can buy results. Okay, and those results can be, it can be inexpensive, it can be expensive. It just kind of depends on how you are working. So if I go back here, and I did a search before for lawnmowers. Okay, I just went in, just did keyword search of lawnmowers. I see a lot of results that come up. So here, if I look, oops, we'll do the line. Here are basically the ads. Okay, these are ads. They have a little ad in front of it, but they do get put in front of the organic results. Sometimes I'll see the ad and I'll see the same Home Depot. In fact, Home Depot just did it. Home Depot's here, Home Depot's there. But for them, it's important that they're positioned above Lowe's, which is their competitor right underneath it. So that's one set of ads. The other set of ads are kind of along the way here, which you can get. And this allows, these tend to be cheaper than these. Not always, though. Again, depends on the category you're competing in. And it allows you maybe to compete for keywords that you normally don't have on your site. So yesterday, there was news that came out that Samsung had bought a ton of ads that when people search for the iPhone 6, the ad came up. It was top position. They paid a lot of money for this. It was top position, and it says, "Didn't you mean a Samsung Galaxy?" is the name of the ad. So they're being kind of cheeky about that. They got some backlash, but we're talking about it now, so it's effective from a sales standpoint. But it was an easy way for them to get positioned for iPhone as an alternative where you normally would not have an iPhone, any comment about the iPhone on your website. So there are some strategies that go along with that. We have some clients who have, again, highly regulated industries where they can't put this term out there because it's a term they're banned from doing. However, they can buy keywords for it, so they can buy that term, compete. So if someone searches for that, let's say medical condition, they search for that medical condition, they can get this site popped up in the AdWords area where they could never really get it in the organic area because it's phrases that they actually can't carry. So there are different thoughts, and it's a different tool to use. And when it comes into how to do AdWords, and then Google has some, Facebook has some, they all kind of follow in the same kind of similar pattern, is initially it's about doing research. So you may think you know what people are searching for, but there's actually tools that Google has that you can go out and put that phrase in, and it'll tell you how many people looked for it, when they looked for it, what your search volume was in your area, what it was in the US. I mean, it gives you a lot of good numbers to start an idea of like, a lot of people looking for this or not a lot of people are looking for this. And both of those represent opportunities. So if not a lot of people are looking for it, but it still comes up, odds are those are probably key customers for you or key potentials. The upside is it's going to probably cost you less to compete there, but you'll get less results coming through, but the quality overall could be better. So it's thinking about what that is. What's the content? What is the actual ad text itself? And I'll talk about the quality score coming up, but what the words are in the ad matter. Google weighs very heavily on that. What the pages that it links to matters. It's trying to, again, get these results to be the best results possible. They don't want people spamming them through. So then the other aspect is those keywords, how often, the search volume, what the recommendation is. So they may say this word is worth, to get this top position throughout the whole day, you're going to have to pay $1 or $5 or 50 cents or whatever that may be. So it depends on what keywords you're searching for, and then what that competition looks like. So you do that research, you think, okay, I'm ready to go, then I go into implementation. So then you have to figure out, where do you want it to display? Because Google has obviously these AdWords that appear here. They also have external display networks where, as you go through a site, there's ads that kind of pop up or they're interspersed between the content. So that's another option for you as well. Those can be sometimes more expensive, sometimes less expensive. It depends on what you're searching for. What kind of filtering do you want to do? Do you want to focus on a particular demographic? Age, location, any number of things, sex, you can kind of hone in and focus your ad, because if you, let's say, allocate $20 a day, you don't want your $20 to be all out by 10 o'clock in the morning. You really want to be effective from that. You can actually turn on what time it appears as well. We have clients who say, okay, I know my ads are going to be most effective between this time and this time because people are doing research on this at night, so we're only going to run our ads in the evening. That allows, instead of trying to spread that $100 out the whole day, it allows them to focus between 4:30 and 6:30 is when I know a lot of the key searches come through, and I can look at that based on my site traffic. So I can see my site traffic, big peaks, big valleys. This is an area. Maybe I only do it on the weekend, maybe I never do it on the weekend. So it's important that it runs hand in hand with the existing efforts. And again, what does the structure of that campaign look like? What's their budget? Is there more than one ad in the group? Is it just one ad? What page does it link to? What does the landing page look like? And then the other aspect is, once this gets going, know how it's doing, how it's performing. Is it giving you that ROI? As it comes in, how do you track when they come to your site? How do you track a success? So we think it's very important you set up basically funnels. So you say, if they come to this page, I want them to do this. And then you can set up what that call to action is, and you can track how many people actually come from the AdWords, do the call to action, or don't do the call to action. So if they're doing the call to action, great. If they're not, hone text, change keywords, change landing page, really try to move that to a higher percent. So it's really important to think like that. And the other one is, the ad rank. Is it critical that you're at position 1, or is it okay if you're in the top 3, or kind of rotate through the top 3? So again, understand where you're performing. You're constantly in the bottom 5 or 6. Maybe you want to spend a little bit more. Maybe you want to raise your bid. There's a lot of different levers that you can kind of pull. And this kind of goes around and around and around. So, once you're reporting, you can do new research, you can do new keyword honing. It kind of continues onward and onward from there. And again, make sure it's working with your SEO strategy. Okay, it doesn't have to duplicate by any means, but it should work in conjunction with. Any question on AdWords? Okay. The other aspect here is the quality score. So Google basically takes 3 elements and writes it together for what's a quality score. The quality score, items with high quality scores means they are of high quality. Therefore, you pay less money for that link. You pay less money for that ad. And therefore, when you pay less money, oftentimes you get to have a higher level of frequency. So they really want to have good ads, because again, their goal is, when I click in this, I'm going to get something that's 100% relevant to my search term. They want to provide the best results possible. And what goes into that is the landing page experience. So when you create an ad and submit it to Google, it'll actually go and look at your landing page of where it's driving to. Every single ad you do should always drive to a landing page. It should never, ever go to the home page, because you want to have the copy on the landing page needs to more or less mimic the copy in the ad. So if you're talking about this in the ad, you better be talking about that on the landing page. It's really critical from that standpoint of what that experience is like. How relevant is it? Is it something where they think that users will find it useful information? And the other one here is the expected CTR, click-through rate. So how many people you think are actually going to kind of click through on the ad. And again, that can vary. The more clicks you get through the ad, the higher performing ad it is, the lower it costs you to display it. It's kind of an interesting combination there. Okay, number 8, social media. This is an area where, from a business sense, for the past several years, people come to me and say, John, I'm a B2B. We have a Facebook page. There's no, I don't need to do anything with it. And before I would say, you're right, there may not be opportunity there. But again, with that Hummingbird release, Google went through and really pushed the value of social networks much higher. Because again, they said, well, if people are really talking about you or engaged in your brand, you are probably a better source of information. So they really started focusing a lot on social issues. And when you look at the numbers here, again, 1.4 billion on Facebook, and these numbers are probably out of date from when I made the slide. YouTube's number 2. Google Plus, the network that Google makes us like, is number 3. Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and kind of goes on and on and on from there. I would say all these networks, no business is exactly alike in using those networks. Some of you may be great Twitter networks, some of you may not. It does take some experimenting to kind of think about how I can use my social network most effectively. If you look at the usage here, I mean, it's a lot of social. It's the #1 thing we do, next to email after that. So we're all engaging it in some way, shape, or form. Facebook's a great example where, again, we have a B2B. And they say, okay, well, John, I'm selling widgets. You know, I'll have a Facebook page, that's fine. I said, well, the opportunity you can use on Facebook now is actually you can use it as your company culture page. So it's about celebrations in your culture. It's about, you know, people in the business. It's a way that you can use from a recruitment standpoint where if people want to engage with your business or learn about your business, they can kind of learn the softer side of it. Or if potential clients or customers want to understand how your environment is, what their experience may be like, they can use Facebook to kind of explore that as well, or engage with it, certainly, too. So, you know, we're in a business, we're B2B, B2C. We do use it as a great opportunity to kind of put things that we're doing out there. We put new websites that we've launched. I mean, we use it just as a great opportunity to kind of talk about some of the neat things we're doing as well. And, you know, by demographic, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. These are all increasing. You know, men and women use it about equally. Big difference here in Facebook. You know, Pinterest, I think, is a big difference between the two. You know, Pinterest is a site that went from unheard of to just a few years back one of the dominant social networking sites. And, you know, it's a great example is if you're selling things, you should be using Pinterest because Pinterest has a very high level of monetization because people see, I mean, it's about collecting links or collecting items and displaying them. So when people click on it, if I click on it, I want to go to that IKEA piece of furniture, or I want to go to that thing from Crate and Barrel. I'm in the mindset, I'm looking for something, I'm looking for a solution, and I'm looking at what other people have posted. And when you look at the metrics, the number of people who actually go through and buy things on Pinterest is enormous compared to Facebook. Because when we're on Facebook, a lot of us aren't really thinking I'm buying stuff. It's more of I'm seeing what's going on. Yes, I have a question.
Do you see a lot of services on Pinterest, or is it more that's something that you sell?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something where, again, I guess it probably depends on what service it is.
Our services.
For a Shive Hattery standpoint, that would be a little harder because, again, I'm not going to be pinning industrial structures I like, or I'm not going to be pinning HVAC systems I enjoy. And that's a coupon. It's a coffee question. So it varies. But again, if you have other businesses, if let's say it's for interior decorating, that would be a great example.
Interior designers.
So there you go. So that would be things I would focus on because people, when they're looking, they're using idea books or theme books, et cetera. So Pinterest is a good form from that standpoint. And you'll have, you know, if the goal is to get engagement from Pinterest, that's one thing. If the goal is just kind of provide another venue that's searchable and findable, because again, if I type in things here, Pinterest is one of the items that comes up that is a network that does get Googled. So there's some value there from that standpoint. You know, if you're doing recipes or you're selling food products, things like that, Pinterest is a great place for that because again, you talk about the recipe, you have a wonderful photo of it, and you have a link back to the site where it exists. So again, it depends. If you're selling widgets, Pinterest probably not quite as important from that standpoint, and it does tend to skew female. The other aspect you see is a really decrease in age from that standpoint. So, you know, it used to be the, you know, quote unquote, older generations were not engaging. Well, that is dropping pretty rapidly. They're also joining those social networks as well. So why should you use social media? Again, different businesses use it different ways. American Airlines is a great example. They use a whole lot of Twitter. Like if you want to complain about something at American Airlines, which a lot of people do because they have 15 full-time employees dedicated to responding to Twitter, it's a whole lot easier to actually interface with a business through Twitter than it is I fill out a contact form and I have no idea where it goes. You know, in a big business, I have no value, I have no belief that any contact form I filled out will be actually responded to. You tweet at them, they'll tweet back. So they use it as a way to kind of provide better customer service. But different people use it just for engaging, getting the word out, you know, posting information. Some people use it for sales, driving sales. Customer service is the one, and then, you know, keeping customers coming back. That's another one where, you know, Twitter, if you're a restaurant, it's a great use. You can tweet out the, you know, your dinner specials or your drink specials. You get that in, you push that information to somebody that normally wouldn't, probably not just go check your website to see if they're there. So I hear a chat room question.
Yes, Barbara's in the chat room would like to Now, if you have to pick just one social media channel to use, which one is the best?
Well, if I had to pick just one, it depends on what business I'm in. I mean, I would really say, number one, I would probably look through your web analytics to see people linking to your site, where are they coming from? The number two, I'd say, know your demographic. You know, if you are a product that sells primarily to females and you're a B2C, then, you know, Pinterest would be an example. It really does vary based on those goals are. I will say there has been times when people come to us and they're surprised which network they're most active in. You know, they had anticipated X, but they actually found they got the most interaction in Y. So there is some kind of experiments that kind of go back and forth from that standpoint. So I know it's a cop-out answer because I didn't say use Facebook, but if you're trying to sell to kids or, you know, teens, Facebook would not be the social network to use now. You know, now you try to do it on Instagram or something like that. So it varies very much on where your audience is. And this is an example of an infographic as well. So social media successes. So, okay, key facts are your customers are on social media and your competitors are on social media. This is the reality. This is not going away. This will be henceforth. So understand that you can put your head in the sand and not engage, but then you cannot also participate in that conversation. So you want to be there for it. You know, the success in social media is having a plan. Okay, it's not just giving it to someone who's under 25 and saying run with it, because that's what a lot of companies do. No blushing. A lot of companies say, well, you know, you're younger, you know social media, go ahead and run at it. But this is your voice to the world for all time. So you want to be thoughtful on what you're presenting, how you're saying it. You know, who will manage your sites? What are you going to post? Where are you going to focus your social media efforts? When will you post? You know, each network has different times that are more effective for posting than others. So for example, Facebook, you know, you're best on weekdays between 6 and 8 a.m. and then 2 and 5 p.m. That's what they say key times to post on Facebook are. The worst times are weekends from 10 to 4 a.m. No one's on, you know, no one is on Facebook wanting to engage with your brands after 10 p.m. on Saturday night. Or you don't want that kind of engagement, maybe. It depends on what you're selling, I guess. You know, from a Twitter standpoint, its best time is weekends from 1 to 3. Worst time is on weekdays from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. LinkedIn, 7 to 8:30 a.m., 5 to 6 p.m. Okay, that's before work starts and after work starts. So you can tell, you know, what LinkedIn's demographic is. Worst is on Monday mornings and Friday afternoons. No surprise there from that standpoint. So if you're going to post your blog article out, you know, think about that. Google Plus, if you care, is from 9 to 11 a.m. and the worst is 6 to 7 p.m. or generally any time. No, I'm just kidding. I'm beating up on Google Plus a little bit, but you know, and again, why are you on the social media? What is your purpose? What are you trying to do? And that again may take some iteration. You may have to kind of figure it out, work it out a little bit, but experiment. And again, have an editorial calendar. Okay, mobile. So this one here is what people would rather give up for a week than their phone. 70% say chocolate, 63% say, 70% say alcohol, 63% chocolate, 33% say sex, 22% say toothbrush, 21% say shoes. All right, I mean the alcohol and chocolate I kind of get, but shoes is crazy. I mean that really shows you how much value people have on their phones and how much we as a culture, good and bad, have come to be, you know, have, you know, that phone as the third friend in the room oftentimes. It is something where, you know, we just are inseparable of it for many of us. This came out in, you know, 2014 was the first year in which, you know, mobile surfing on the web outweighed desktop surfing. And that's why Google said we got to make these changes because people are using their phones differently. How do you use mobile? Well, customers spend 60% of their time on the internet on mobile devices. Okay, 3 or 4 people will search on their smartphone for a business they are looking to work with. And the one down here, this is the biggest one, is 70% of mobile searches lead to an action on a website within 1 hour. So once they do that search, you're really in the mode to do something. I mean, there is a direct correlative between the two. And again, and just think how you search. You know, what do you do? Well, I'll start on a search engine, and you know that depends on for automobiles, home and garden, apparel and beauty. Some of them start on a website, so I know I'm going to go and look at a website. I know the website itself. I'm just going to go directly to it. And 26 start on apps. You know, apps is one where if it warrants it and your user base would use it, it has a great potential to kind of capture that brand and capture that thoughts. And a lot of those are related to finance, electronics, apparel as well. So, it's just we use our phone constantly now. It's something where you can't, pretend it doesn't exist, or you can't say, my customers don't use it, because they are using it. And again, they want to be able to read it, and they want to be able to easily navigate on your site. Really important. That being said, most of us use many different devices. We use maybe phones in the morning, or I know when I walk from my car to the office here, I'm checking my email, I'm looking at Facebook. I mean, I'm probably gonna get run over one of these days, but I'm using that. I'm using my mobile on my commute. When I get to work, I'm using my PC. I'm using my PC, Mac, whatever. It's the desktop version of it. And then as it goes into the evening, I have a tablet that I then will oftentimes use as a second screen. So I'm watching TV. Watching TV is an interesting concept, because TV's on, my wife is sitting next to me on her tablet, I'm sitting next to her with my tablet, and we're all doing searches. So these are all kind of second screens. I'll see a commercial, I'll look up a website, I'll just be checking email, I'm checking social media. We're all kind of operating that way. So how can your business interact and engage with your potential client in that manner? Okay, last one here is using video. And so video is one where it really, really helps a person understand your product or service. I'm a person where I'm not going to watch just a video. Like if I get a news article that just has just a video, I'm not going to play it, because I don't want to play it, I'm at work. But if I'm doing research, if I'm looking at a product, I will read the specs and then I'll watch a video. I'm in a different mindset from that standpoint. It really helps people understand it. And I hear there's a chat question.
Yeah, Steve on the chat was asking what are your recommendations on how to utilize the web and social media properties in the event of a crisis situation for a business, because he's looking at what's going on in Baltimore right now, or if there's an accident or some type of weather or a lockdown situation. What would be your recommendations on how to utilize social media in that factor? Okay, that's a great one. That's a coffee question. Thank you, Steve. It is a way that it's a first line of defense. I think it kind of depends on your demographic, though. Some people, when an example is if I'm trying to figure out whether or not school is closed, I will most probably go to the school website or the district website, and they'll have a big banner up that says open or closed. I wouldn't necessarily look at Twitter to come to Twitter per se from that, but that's some people do. I mean, you would have to see what kind of statistics you're getting from those that come out. I would definitely say it's a great opportunity to announce those things across all the platforms. You want to coordinate. So if you do your Facebook, you can respond via Facebook, you can respond via Twitter. In the end, it's really a way that kind of pushes that out. It pushes it out there. I guess again, it depends on who you're trying to talk to. I mean, that's really the hardest part from that standpoint. So I know I may not have answered it perfectly from that standpoint, but again, different people use it in slightly different ways. Going back to video here, again, 64% of visitors are more likely to buy a product online after watching a video, and 90% say seeing a video is helpful about a product decision. So again, think about you as you go home and when you're looking to buy something, what's your process? That video adds that third element. It's not about not having text, it's not about not having pictures and just video. It is yet another channel to engage with a person. And it really matters. 100 million users watch videos online every single day. And a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, a video's worth 1.8 million words, because that's how many are in a three-minute video. It can be very effective from that standpoint. And the other thing to think about is YouTube is the #2 search engine. We don't think of YouTube as a search engine, but it is #2 search engine. And from an SEO standpoint, videos will oftentimes leap over organic results. So if I go back to that flat tire example I said in the beginning, when I say how to fix a flat tire, the first thing I got was several videos of how to fix a flat tire that different companies had kind of put out there. And then after that, I got to the text link. So it is also a way to kind of leap over your normal traditional organic results. And it's not about just doing video, because again, it's about more channels so the consumer can choose the channel and how they want to engage with you. But again, here, 85% increase in the possibility of a purchase.
A video is 2 extra minutes per user on your page, so you're really increasing that stickiness to it. And the subject of video will increase opening rates 13%. So, I mean, it's not the only thing you should do. It is definitely one of the mixes, and that can be, again, about a product, about a service, about your company. I mean, videos can range all over the place. They don't have to be just in a B2C or a direct selling component. So, final thoughts here. You are never really done with a website, okay? There is no point in which you did it and you're done. You can take it off your list and be there, because, the rules I talk about today may not be here tomorrow. They may be different tomorrow. So it's constantly changing, constantly evolving. One value that we bring to our clients is that we go out there and reread all the ever-changing technology scenes to really kind of parse out what technology may be useful to you or for your particular business. And again, it's really important to kind of stay aware of what may be helpful. If your site isn't responsive, it better be really soon. So talk to me after if you want to. I can help you with that. Content marketing really works. Many conferences now really have there's whole areas that have gotten rid of inbound sales because they have been so effective from a content standpoint. Now, just putting content out there doesn't mean that suddenly your phone's going to start ringing ringing out, your email box is going to get full. It really means that it's a beginning step of a process. So what is the call to action, and making sure you have good calls to action in conjunction with those efforts. A web effort needs to be included in someone's job description. Okay, if they're going to write blogs, don't add blogs on top of everything else they're doing. They should allocate that time. They have to be responsible for it, and they have to add time to plan for it. And that should be something in which they get evaluated on as part of their job performance. It's important to look at that, how to know if they're being effective. Plans for marketing, SEO, social media, blogging, etc. make the difference. Okay, planning really, really works. It's no secret. I'm not telling you anything you probably don't know already, but it really does make the difference between a moderately successful campaign and a very successful campaign. New content is better SEO. So if you haven't got to the point where you're wanting to add content on a regular basis, please get in mind to do that, because Google values that so tremendously. So think about how or strategies you can get content out there. And that's where, again, where blogs can be very effective, because you can add little snippets of content enough where it gets those keywords in, gets those key phrases in, but still makes it very manageable. Get people to come back, and again, use video to increase the chance of purchases. So if you have a product that is something that can be purchased, video adds an additional layer to it that all the text and all the photos in the world can't. Just think if you're going to buy a car, you can look at shots of the exterior, look at shots of the interior, but until you actually see it drive or hear it, it adds that whole dimension to it. So keep that in mind. I think that's it. So 3 minutes questions. I try to time it pretty well from that standpoint. But any areas there I didn't talk about, or you'd like me to kind of go back? Yes?
Question.
Michelle.
There's been some conversation on purchasing a URL that's secure. And I'm not sure if Google is a driver on that. And if you do not do that, what's the consequences? Are you penalized if you don't have the HTTPS? Okay. And then when you do go and do that, how does that affect pages they have currently out there?
Okay, that's great. That's a harder question, but a good question. Google does value HTTPS or having a certificate on your site, and they will raise that as a point in your litany of points that determines your search engine effectiveness. So the short answer is a secure site is good. As far as every single person doing it, it's not one that sometimes I always focus on, because when sites go into secure, oftentimes, and basically all that means is that the data between you and the website is going back and forth on an encrypted channel. So it's just encrypted. That comes at a performance hit. So the site will oftentimes be a little bit slower than a site without encryption on or not using the certificate. So anything financially related, any bank, anything like that, the whole thing should be in HTTPS. There's no questions about that, because it's about the security from that standpoint. Beyond that, if your site itself is not secure, are you willing to give up a little bit of a site performance in order to have that come up? Because Google also ranks you on how quickly your site comes back. We try to target 2 to 3 seconds load time for each page is kind of the maximum acceptable load time, unless you're using other aspects on the page. So it's one of those ones where I don't say, yes, you absolutely need to do it, because it does come at a cost. Google values it, but it also values page load as well. So maybe. I mean, it varies. For you guys in particular, I wouldn't generally recommend it because big, huge photos, and you don't need anything, you know, adding 2 or 3 seconds there on that wouldn't be my recommendation. Good question.
Coffee one?
Sure, double up on coffee. Got one for your friend, so. Anything else?
She's not my friend.
Anything else? All right, well, I just want to thank you all for coming. I really appreciate the time. I hope you walked away with a few different things, a few little tidbits you learned today. Again, we'll be sending out a survey. I do ask for your feedback from that. I appreciate that. I take that very seriously. And again, this has been a special edition of Informatics University. This is something that we do for our clients on a monthly basis, so you can kind of learn about all the new trends in the marketplace and how they may be applicable to your business. So thank you all very much. I appreciate it.